I am guessing that you haven't thought about this lately. You are seated with Christ in the heavenlies. You remember reading about it, but you haven't thought about it because you have no idea what it means. Well, I think I know now. Not completely. I'm still learning things. I mentioned last time about God being our Father. The entire Old Testament was spent teaching us who God is, what He is like, His power, His holiness, His awesomeness. Now in the New Testament, we learn that this God, the Almighty, the Everlasting, is our Father. Some people will think that I might be taking God too casually here, but I think too many people are missing the whole point. But that was the last lesson. I've had things that I've prayed for decades with no resolution. Things even getting worse in some cases. Is this God's will? Why won't He answer my prayers? I think this is the answer. When our children were young, they were dependent on us for everything. We made them breakfast, we picked out their clothes, bought them, and even dressed them for a few years. Our goal is that they would be able and actually do many of these things for themselves. When the text says that we are seated with Christ in the heavenlies, are we sitting on folding chairs or small stools? It doesn't specifically say, but generally speaking, when we are sitting with somebody anywhere, we mean that we're sitting at the same table, or in the same furniture, in the same room with this other person. Too many of us are still living in the Old Testament where we are afraid of displeasing God, uncertain of where we stand with Him from day to day. To use a modern illustration, it's like we got a job at this huge company. The pay and benefits are decent, but we are always worried about losing our jobs, how well we are doing at work, permanent performance reviews, worried when the boss calls us into his office. But then you learn that the founder and owner of this company is actually your father, who you never knew you had. You're immediately promoted to one of those jobs where you go around to all the stores and check in on things. If you find things you don't like, you can either have it corrected immediately or you have access to the one who will. Like Paul says in Romans 5:17, for if by the transgression of the one, meaning Adam, death reigned through the one, much more those who receive the abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness will reign in life through the one Jesus Christ. This word reign is the same word used of kings and queens in the Bible. They have real authority. Now we certainly know that God knows more and better than we do, and we would never want to think that we know better than Him. But I think too many of us are afraid to make any decisions at all. At some point, you will see things and situations that you know full well what God would want. We may pray and ask God to change it, but I think a lot of times He will say, if we listen, you fix it. You're a big boy or girl now. Take control of the situation and change it. Like when Jesus talked about moving mountains by talking to them. Mark 11:23. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says is going to happen, it will be granted him, or it will be to him. Therefore I say to you, all things for which you pray and ask, to believe that you have received them, and they will be granted to you, given you. We aren't to pray that God will move the mountain. We are to command it to move ourselves. We're always so afraid that God might not want that thing, like kids who are afraid to do anything because their parents may not want them to, afraid to get their own food out of the fridge to eat, afraid to spend money on anything, afraid to make any decisions at all. Hey, I'm talking to God all the time. I want His input on everything. But I think too often we are praying that God will move the mountains, and He is saying, no, you move it. I told you how, and I told you you can. Jesus wasn't mad at Peter for wanting to walk on the water. He was disappointed that he didn't. Matthew 14:31. Immediately, Jesus stretched out His hand and took hold of him, Peter, and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? I think too many of our unanswered prayers is not because of God's unwillingness, but because of our fear and believing that we have any authority or responsibility to act on our own.